And I'm running for Lieutenant Governor of the great state of Mississippi. And I certainly do appreciate the opportunity to be here to speak at this historic Neshoba County Fair. But before I begin, I want to recognize my wife who came to be here with me today, Lisa, and my two children, Jason and Nicholas. And I want to say a happy birthday to my youngest son, Nicholas, who's 3 years old today. But I'm from Morville, a little community right outside of Tupelo in Lee County. I come from a blue-collar, working-class background. My parents both worked in a factory over at Tupelo called Daybreak Lighting. My father retired from there after 47 years working on the paint line. My mother retired from there after working over 40 years on the assembly line. And it was from them that I learned the value of hard work, but most of all I learned the value of a hard-earned dollar. Growing up I didn't have very much, so I had to start to work. I had to start hauling hay in the summertime. Had to cut firewood in the winter to make a little extra money. And in junior high school I started a little business called Jamie's Lawn Care Service, and when I got to Etowah Community College, I was mowing 50 yards, 2 cemeteries, and 6 apartment complexes. Believe you me, I learned how to work. And then I started a business called North Mississippi Horticulture Services that enabled me to graduate from the University of Mississippi debt-free. And in 1995, at the age of 22, I ran for the House of Representatives. And the people who I grew up with, who knew me before I was born, who I went to church with, who I worked for, elected me to represent them in the House. And they re-elected me in 1999 and in 2003. And I'm proud to have had the opportunity to represent the people of Etowah, Lee, and Tishomingo counties. But I didn't get my values from the National Republican Party, nor did I get my values from the National Democratic Party. I got my values growing up in rural Mississippi from my parents, Roger and Gail Franks, and that little Church of God church on Briar Ridge Road in Tupelo. That's why way back in 1997, I fought and banned partial birth abortion in this state. That's why that same year we eliminated the marriage tax penalty and banned same-sex marriages. Then in 2000, we were able to ban homosexual adoption in this state. And in 2001, we put our national motto of "In God We Trust" on every classroom wall in Mississippi. And in 2004, I fought to put a constitutional amendment on the ballot that you in Neshoba County overwhelmingly adopted that says that marriage is a sacred vow between one man and one woman. This past legislative session, I fought to ban abortion in Mississippi. The legislation says that if Roe versus Wade is overturned, abortion becomes illegal in Mississippi. I have stood up for your values in the House of Representatives, and I want to do that as your next Lieutenant Governor. There's a value that a lot of politicians don't talk about, and that's the value of an education. I understand what an education can do because I couldn't afford one. That's why in 1997 I fought so hard to pass the adequate education program and voted to override Governor Fordyce's veto of that act. And we need to make sure that the adequate education program is funded each and every year, not just in an election year. We need to make sure that our children are taken care of every year. If we want to provide jobs for our people, the best economic development tool that we can give our children is a first-class, high-quality education. Education and economic development go hand in hand. That's why we've got to fund our community and junior colleges. Each time we shortchange them, we have less money for workforce training. Each time we shortchange our institutions of higher learning, tuition goes up and it stifles educational opportunities for our people. You know, I've been able to get a good education. I've been able to get a good job and move right across the road from where I grew up. And I want to make sure that every Mississippian has that same opportunity, because I am tired of our brightest and our best having to go to some other state or some other community. They need to be able to stay right here in Neshoba County if that's what they choose. You know, we have got to fight for every job that's in this state. We're going to have to fight for existing business and industry, fight for our small businesses, and we need to form alliances like we did back in 2000 when we passed the legislation to form the Pull Alliance that allowed Pontotoc and Union and Lee counties to come together to form the Wellspring Project, and ultimately we brought Toyota to Northeast Mississippi, and I'm proud to have been a part of that. But we cannot simply rely on the Toyotas and the Nissans. We must continue to fight for existing business and industry and keep them here. You know, as I travel all over this state, people are concerned about health care. I have fought to make sure that health care is available for all Mississippians in my 12 years in the legislature. But it's really hit home in the last few months when my mother was diagnosed with leukemia. I've seen how health care has kept her alive. And we need to make sure that health care is affordable and accessible for all Mississippians. And as I travel all over Mississippi, especially on the Gulf Coast, I hear about the need for insurance reform. We need insurance reform in this state, and we need it now, because it's wrong when people on the Gulf Coast cannot rebuild their home because they cannot afford to pay the mortgage and afford to pay the insurance rates. Now, you've heard a lot about this election. It's very important for the future of Mississippi. But let me tell you, my two opponents are running to be the best ally that Governor Barber can have. Don't get me wrong, Haley Barber's a good man, but sometimes he's right and sometimes he's wrong. And he needs a lieutenant governor that will stand up and be independent and make sure that that state senate once again represents the interest of the people of this state and not the interest of a single politician or the interest of a single political party. Now, over the past 4 years, we have seen a state senate, the leadership of the state senate that has failed our children by refusing to fund the adequate education program by over $300 million. We have seen a state senate that has failed our elderly and our disabled by kicking 65,000 of them off of Medicaid. We have seen a state senate that has failed working families by refusing to cut the sales tax on groceries in half. And it's appalling to have the highest sales tax on groceries in this union when we live in the poorest state in the union. We have seen a state senate that has failed property owners of this state by refusing to pass comprehensive eminent domain protection that would protect our most fundamental right as a Mississippian, and that's the right to own property. We have seen a state senate that has failed the voters of this state by refusing to pass campaign finance reform, and they're still allowing liberal special interest agitators to come in this state and buy elections, and that's wrong. Now, if you want a lieutenant governor who will stand up for you, who will stand up for your family, who will stand up for our children, who will stand up for our vulnerable, our disabled, and our frail, then on Tuesday, November the 6th, go to the polls and elect Jamie Franks, your next lieutenant governor. Thank you. May God bless you.